depositories.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
And I'll abstain, Mayor.
Thank you. Motion carries.
I move to approve the consent agenda, A through K with the exception of F.
Yeah, we've already voted on that. I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Can we just remove that?
I thought so.
That was the first one we did, yeah.
I was just moving approval of.
Right. But F was already gone.
Yes.
Did you vote on that? We just voted to remove it from consent now.
Sure, we did. Now, oh, yeah, I should have voted for that. I don't need to abstain.
So I need to vote.
So I guess at this time, I'll move that we approve the F agenda item, the official depositories for the city of Mitchell.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
And now I'll abstain.
Carries. Okay, consent, citizens input.
Mayor, we need a roll call vote on the
Oh,
consent
sorry.
agenda.
Roll call, please.
Smith,
Thank you.
Aye.
Charks,
Aye.
Allen,
Aye.
Barrington,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Tronis,
Aye.
Rice,
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thank you, Michelle. Citizens input. If you need to address the mayor and members of the city council on an item that was not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium and state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be considered, but no action will be taken at this time.
I've heard from a number of citizens, both for and against the pool, and they're a little concerned about this committee and all the rest because they said they had voted either for the pool or against the pool based on the drawings and the public forums and that kind of thing. And they were wondering, and I'm going to propose this, they were wondering what the chances were of bidding that particular design, and then if it came in way above, have the committee. If it came in way below, have the committee. I have no idea how firm that drawing actually was. I just raising their question.
That was actually before my time too, but my understanding that was a conceptual design. And maybe to clarify the purpose of this committee or this panel, as I'm calling it, it's to do a review of the design. We're not trying to recreate the wheel here, or reinvent, or have all new proposals, and I mean that's just going to delay this whole process by months. And I know Stephanie and I have had some conversations on this morning too, and talking about that. And we are going to meet sometime this week. Kim is out ill today, but we want to review that time frame that came out in the paper last week. I think that we can cut that dramatically. And I did send Jeff a note on that today too. That I think maybe my take on that was a little bit too optimistic, and I think maybe Tim's was a little bit too pessimistic. But I think realistically we should be somewhere in the middle. But what I want to do is, I don't want to repeat some of the things that happened that we had with the Corn Palace design and some of the costs associated with that. So the purpose of the committee is to review what's already been done. And I intend to take a trip myself, and I think Stephanie's going to go along, as well as Tim McGannon, and anybody on that committee, and hopefully there will be a good number of us. And we can go and look at the pool as it was designed and built in Watertown and in Yankton, and see if there's anything that we missed or that committee missed initially. And then, of course, we got to have our architect in place before we do that, before we actually have this committee then come back. But we can be doing this before we hire the architect. And the thought process is to have those concerns or questions presented to that architect so he can incorporate them into this existing design already. We want to talk to these people in Yankton. We want to talk to the people in Watertown and maybe even in Sioux Falls. We want to find out what went right and what went wrong so that we don't repeat the same mistakes that maybe they made. So that's kind of the purpose of this whole panel and committee. It's more of a review committee than anything else. We're going to, they will not be picking any architects. Those architects will be picked by myself and a couple of council members with Tim McGannon. Again, this committee is just to review that design and put whatever input they want to put in to that design concept, the final design. And doesn't mean that we have to do it, but we want to take it under advisement, under consideration, and make sure that we aren't missing anything in the final analysis. That's kind of the purpose of the committee. Don't look at that committee or that panel maybe meeting more than 2 times, maybe 3 times maximum. And so that is primary, that reason. It's part of the reason. Another part of the reason, too, is that, and I don't quite understand why that did not happen, because I think it did happen, that that there was opportunities before my time, but my understanding was that there was plenty of opportunity for public input on that first round. But you still heard that quite a bit out there in the street during this whole campaign. Well, there was no public input. There was no public input. Everyone that had public input or had input into this pool design was either somebody on the Aquatics Club or somebody on the city council or somebody on the chamber. And I don't think that was necessarily true from what I understand. But I want to make sure that we get a second chance opportunity for any public input that might be, so that we can take it under advisement, take it into, that the architect can listen to it. Hopefully, if it has merit, we'll decide that as a committee and as a group, and that architect's responsibility will be to incorporate it into the final design plan. That is the purpose for it.
I have one other thing on a totally unrelated subject, if nobody else is jumping in on this.
Can I just
Sure.
expand a little bit on that, Mel? And I had like Jerry said, we've been conversing a little bit, and then also had a conversation with Stephanie today. And one of the things that we're going to have to settle in on is the delivery method of the construction, if we want at risk or agency. And I know Stephanie has had some experience with her former job, and I kind of visited about that a little bit today. And I'm wondering if maybe, especially in this initial stages when the committee is still meeting, if maybe we should have it on the agenda. And in reality, you're right, Mayor, for the several months that we were meeting and relaying information to the public, we had it on the agenda, and everybody had the ability to come in and speak, in which there were several that did, especially the people that were using it during the day and not in the aquatic club. So we did gather a lot of information and met for months. And yes, things do change, and I like your idea about visiting the pools in South Dakota that are currently in construction or have already been done, because there are things that they're going to say, we didn't do this right. So I applaud you for that. But I'm wondering if maybe the next meeting that we can at least start having the discussion after you 3 have met with Tim, you 2 and Tim, and maybe start walking through of maybe what delivery method we may want, and then also you can give us an update kind of where we're at with the architect and what you're finding out there and what the standard fees are, whatever the case may be. But I think in this initial stages, I would like to see it on the agenda just to keep it in front of everybody, so it always gives them ability. If you guys are going to meet during the day and you've got some things, there's always the evening that they can come and relay the information to us. And I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to add at all to that, but.
I guess as Councilor Smith said, my experience has been in the traditional design bid build, which is what you just did with the Corn Palace remodeling project, but also with the construction manager agency representative, and that's where the construction manager is not actually working on the project, and instead they are just representing the owner. They're participating in the project from day one, recommending different construction methods and things to save cost. But the difference with the at-risk, that person is also doing the work or serving as the contractor. In this situation, they're not, and they're just purely representing the owner's interest. And I said that might be something that we want to consider for this project, because it is a specialized situation. The one positive that came up, I was just sharing with the mayor today when I visited with the mayor in Watertown. And if you remember, they use JLG, which is the same architectural firm that we used for our conceptual design, just because they were currently in the project with Watertown. Their project actually came in under bid, or under what the estimate was anticipated. And the reason Mayor Thorson thought that happened is because of the recommendations that were made during design to do things a little bit different in construction method than what the architect had proposed. So those are the kind of things that Mayor Toomey and I were anticipating hearing in the on-site visits too. So I think that will aid us in the moving forward with the pool construction bids.
Mayor, we did the same thing when we had the soccer task force. Dave Tronis, Marty Barrington, myself were on there, and we went and toured the Brookings facility, and the mayor met us out there, and we got the pros and cons of it, and we came back. That's the only one that we went and looked at. When we came back and we had a
Did you
architect,
find
we
value in doing that?
We fine-tuned it, and it's a fantastic facility.
And actually, we did that same thing when we were building our joint government center in Brookings for the city-county facility. And we actually changed the way we were doing our boardroom and kind of our high-traffic areas based on what we saw in person at the different sites that we went to.
I think, this might be viewed as, taking a little extra time and prolonging the process, but I think in reality, it's going to shorten the process, because if you can avoid costly mistakes right up front, because there's mistakes that cost you money and cost you time, and I'm trying to avoid that, and I think this trip, these on-site trips are important to ask those questions, bring them back, share them with the architect, and incorporate it into the final design.
You're on the right page.
Mayor, I've got a substantial amount of material that seems was not available 3.5 years ago that is available now from the various states and the federal government, giving thumbnail sketch explanations for construction manager risk and construction manager agent that probably are much clearer than an explanation that somebody would give you.
I hope.
I shared
I would provide that.
I shared a good document with the mayor too that walks through the different methods and what the advantages, pros and cons are for each one that came out of an educational
There's a lot of
institute.
information.
I hope I clarified what we're trying to do, and if anyone still has any questions after the council meeting, please come talk to me one-on-one, or ask anybody in the public or anybody on the council. Any questions about this, come talk to me.
I've got, I guess, one point that I want to make sure is right in my mind, that I don't want to wait to do the request to hire an architect. We need to get the request for architect out there. We just pick the architect that we want. It's not a bid process.
Correct.
So
That's
the
what we're-
sooner we get that done, the quicker we can answer the questions
Agreed.
of what this committee has. Because when we had the committee before, and we met 3 times with the architect that we hired for conceptual things, all our questions were answered by the architect, not by the committee doing research. So if the committee comes up with questions and then we sit around for 2 months waiting for an architect to answer them, that's what I want to try and avoid.
I think the conversation that the mayor and I had is, I already had a draft RFP ready before this whole issue happened last year, if you remember. Now, Tim wants to redo that a bit, which is fine. I think in the time that the RFP is let out there, we already have 10 to 15 companies that have been calling us probably monthly ever since the council decided to move forward with the pool project. So I don't think the turnaround time is going to take as long as a typical response, just because we already have people that know this is coming. We already have the conceptual design. Like the mayor and I were talking today, we think we can go out and do those on-site visits, and at the same time we're advertising for the RFPs. So everybody's in the same frame coming back when the architect's on staff ready to go, and then the questions will be present already.
Multiple things that we can be doing at the same time.
Yep.
Just to be clear in my mind, when we talk about an architect, we're talking about a pool specialist.
I would think that one of the criteria that we would have is an architectural firm that has had experience in that specific type of work. That's specifically why we use JLG, I'm going to get that incorrect, is because they were currently in process in South Dakota, so they had current construction cost comparisons, but also they had done those facilities in the past. The ones that we've been contacted by are ones who specifically work on pools, and I don't know how they hear about this, but they've known about it for the last year or so.
Again, just not, I don't know if we picked the right architectural firm before, so I don't want to make that mistake.
Totally understand.
Well, that's another thing we're going to find out on those on-site visits. What was What was your relationship with the architect? Did we get a favorable feedback or do we not?
Yep, that can be
And,
part of
and if we
it.
get a favorable feedback, then I think we might want to consider them and cut the corners that Steve Rice is talking about. And that's one of the reasons why I put you on this committee, Steve, because you guys, you're a good reference point from being on the first committee.
I've got something completely off the pool. It still has to do with water,
Okay.
snow. I was downtown after the big snow, and Main Street was cleaned up partially for the Mike Miller Classic. And the businesses on Main Street that were not in the cleaned up area were fit to be tied because the basketball classic was worth cleaning out the windrows, but their business was not worth cleaning out the windrows. So I guess in the future, I would suggest if we're going to clean part of Main Street, we do it all. So
Do you want to address that?
Well, I just do know, I feel bad, Tim's not here, so I'm not trying to speak for that department either, but I do know in conversations, even with Kevin, that at one point during that storm, we had employees working a tremendous amount of
30
hours
36
straight.
hours straight.
36 hours straight, trying to get some of that done.
what they
So-
were talking about is the windrow in the middle of Main Street was cleaned up for the lower blocks, the northern blocks of Main Street for the Mike Miller Classic, and then they just quit with 3 blocks to
And
go.
the reason why they quit is because the length of time that those employees had been working straight through, and they had to get those employees a rest before they had to come back for the second anticipated snow. You know, they're people too, and they need that break in between going.
We were anticipating a second storm that never
And then it didn't
materialized,
come,
and that was part
right.
of the reason I went into that decision.
And you know that I heard those same concerns, Mal. In fact, I was downtown that day and hiked the middle windrow. So, and I guess the question is, how did they decide that that was the place to stop? Do you want to address that at all, Kevin? He doesn't know. I know. But I just, it seemed rather arbitrary that they stopped that cleanup on Main Street.
The decision was kind of made, it was myself and 3 other people. After about hour and a half, we kind of made a decision that we needed to create a bunch of parking and stuff. And all the parking was city parking lots, disco lot over here, everything on the north side of Main, off to the west of your block. And then the 5th and Main parking lot and everything. So it was kind of just decided that we'd go 5th, north to 9th, to create as much parking as we could create at that time.
How long was it before the Main Street merchants had their that?
The next evening, we went in and did the rest of that. And then we also do all of Havens, all of Sanborn, First Street. So it's a very time-consuming ordeal. District 8 typically takes 8-10 hours on a 2-inch snow. And we had a lot more than 2 inches of snow. So just moving what we did took us about 12 hours.
And those staff do need a break.
Yeah, sure, I understand
And
that.
they work a lot of hours. And we have to give them some kind of
Kevin?
break to rest.
I think I'm one of them 3 people that you called, that you're referring to. And when Kevin told me that there was, 36 hours and these people were going without a rest, the initial thought was not to do any part of Main Street. And I said, as long as the parking lots are cleaned off, so we have adequate parking for the Mike Miller Classic, that would be the most important thing. I mean, we had to have parking for that Classic. About an hour and a half later, I get an email from you, I believe it was, that stated that you were going to go ahead and do 5th Street all the way up to 9th. But I concurred, and I'll take responsibility for that too. I concurred with the decision that was made because I thought it was a safety issue. These people were tired, and I didn't think that it was probably prudent for them to continue working and maybe a pedestrian or somebody get hurt, killed in the worst case scenario. And I agreed with the decision that was made, whether it was right or wrong.
And actually, when you hear the explanation, I mean, I agree. I mean, it makes total sense. I think it's unfortunate that the merchants and the customers downtown didn't have that information. And I don't know how you go about doing that and disseminating that information, but I think it would, like, if people understood, these people have been working for 36 hours straight. They needed, so was there?
You are repeating the conversation that Kevin and I just had in my office, that, you know, it's important for the community as a whole or in general to hear the human side of what it's taking to
Right.
get that much done, because as he said, you know, it was a significant more than even a 2-inch snow. So
Right.
it doubled or tripled the length of time to get that work done. And when people see the people tied to that and how many hours they were putting in to get that done, everybody would have wanted to have safety to come first,
Sure.
I would assume.
Sure, absolutely.
And we figured we were gonna do the park lots and everything, and I talked to the guys to see kind of how they were doing, how they found everything. And we figured we already had the equipment hooked up to the blower part of it, and we had the trucks available, so we just went ahead and removed what we said on Main Street. And that drug us into the morning, the following morning already. So if we would have picked up the rest of the snow, we would have been fighting traffic all day long, and that's just a daily situation. With our blower, you got trucks there, you got cars parked on the side. Those blowers pick up a truck of ice, going over the truck or something.
I think we learn sometimes from, you know, from experiences like this, and if it should happen again, where we have, you know, employees at risk and the public at risk, that, you know, somehow maybe we can notify these businesses that,
Absolutely.
I think if they knew why we made the decision that we made, they would understand.
Even if you
And I understand, and I do
contact
concur with what Mel said too about what the, you know, how the businesses felt. I understand how they felt. But I think if they would have known why we did what we did, I think they would have
Yeah.
agreed with the decision made.
And I think that if it's specifically on Main Street, even if you contact Carrie at Mitchell Main Street and beyond, and just let her know, we know that this is unfortunate, but we've got people that have been working around the clock for 36 hours. We need to give them a break. We'll be on this tomorrow after working hours. I think that it gives them, you know, it gives them a perspective that, okay, then they can explain it to their customers. You know, they feel better about it. The customers can have some peace of mind. So,
Well, and, you know, it's easy for us to be Monday morning quarterbacks, but, you know, if you could have called the radio or something, because as we saw with the sidewalk,
right.
if there's perceived inequality,
Maybe next time that's something we should consider doing. Just notify the radio and have them make an announcement that this is what's going to happen and here's why.
You know, we issue our notices, we talk to the police department, all the radio stations. They bought the Telewan KSFY, so they can scroll on the screens and everything. But I guess if we get in a predicament like that again, where we can't get to something, then maybe we'll make a adjustment to the radio, and we'll just call the local radio station.
Sure.
Issue a different.
Yeah.
Because right now, it's set up to go all through, I think some of these councils like that. Some of it, but it goes to all the radio stations. Yeah, we'll definitely, think about that future here. Hopefully, we don't have that much fun again, that close together. But
Are you ready for spring yet?
I understand, no, it's all right. Yeah, the first time we actually split the crew up, we actually only put in half the crew, and then we knew we were getting snow, so we brought in the other half. We kind of mixed them, but even with that, we were still running. And it gets,
Wow.
when they're driving a 50,000-pound truck and loaded and everything, it's a little bit.
Sure. Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
So I have one more thing, and we'll just keep playing off of the one before. I thought maybe when Mel said he was going to talk about snow, he was going to talk about sidewalks. I was contacted by people who are concerned that the sidewalks are not being cleared. They can't walk their dogs, and certainly if we're concerned about ADA, and it's a situation where no one in a wheelchair or anything else would be able to pass on some of these sidewalks, I wondered, how are we enforcing the sidewalk ordinance that they need to have their sidewalks cleared by within, what is the hour?
15 right now.
It's a 50. Did they identify who they were in these places?
They did, and I have the area, actually, Nell Olson's sidewalks were clear. So, but they started at 716 West 3rd, down 2nd toward downtown and back east, and then on West 4th back to 716 West 3rd. I don't know if you can do that, but if you can picture that. So it was actually in your part of the town.
Well, I think if it happens again, citation should be written.
Yeah,
And
so.
maybe they should be checked on during the next storm. And if that happens,
And is
they
this
get a
a Wade
ticket.
London thing, that it's part of his responsibility to be kind of assessing what the sidewalk situation is, you know, in the heart of town.
Everyone should know what the policy is.
Yeah, they're in violation now because goat tracks are shoveled, and we were talking before the meeting. There are people who shovel their sidewalks, but then the corners are little Mount Everest that you have to get over because there's no openings there. So
We talked about this, last week, and we talked about this the other day, when it was gonna be sick. We were gonna go after sidewalks, kinda like how we did snow removal last week, but with that second storm, we decided to wait until that second storm is done. That way people aren't, shoveling sidewalks multiple times or that kind of issue. So we're going through and doing a blanket, sidewalk snow removal, throughout the whole town, starting today. What we do is we tag the property first, and then give them a day to get it clean. If they don't clean it within that next day, then we don't clean it, and we start, get clean.
now, is that just sidewalks that aren't shoveled at all, or does that include the goat tracks that you have to be a llama to get through?
Well, we just finished up with the first snowfall last year. We went out and found all the ones that did not even make the attempt. We got them all cleaned up. And we kind of laid back a little bit with the next storm that was supposed to get. Of course, we didn't have no, but just a little bit of dust. But we did get the ones that didn't make the attempt are done, commercial and residential. And now we're going to start with the ones that have the dust.
You know, I understand, I appreciate that, and I know that we just got off the holiday season, but it's January 4th today, and when was the last storm? Was it Christmas?
The 26th
Yeah,
of
December.
December.
So that's a pretty long stretch that these people have gone without
Right.
removing the snow from their
And then,
sidewalks, or
then
been,
then we waited, and then now it's 29th.
oh, I
So
see.
then we went for the 2 days, we
Right.
removed snow because people are getting it down.
Sure, and New Year's Day was Friday,
Yeah.
and
We
so
started
you had
today.
vacation, so today was.
But I only had, I guess, telling him, or Harry, we only had 2 complaints with Harry.
Hmm.
So nobody called in except 2 people.
But
If you have addresses that you might not call with,
Okay.
yeah.
That was my question. How do you operate? Do you operate only on complaints? Do you have another system?
No, when, after the snow, after a lot of time we give them, we'll go out and drive up and down the street. Day and a half, 2 days, get the whole town, tagged, and then we proceed with
Do you do anything in association with the post office? And the reason I ask this is because I know, from talking to postal carriers that they have to tag themselves and say, I'm not going to deliver after X date, tomorrow because you have to have your snow removed. Is there an option to work with the postal service to get a report on addresses that they are noting are not shoveled?
haven't done, yeah, but we, like I said, if they come in and complain about it, we'll take, action on it.
Well, do you feel that it would be worthwhile talking to the postmaster and seeing if we could work with them? The experiences that I've had with the postmaster have been good experiences. Do you think that it would be a viable option to work with the postmaster and see if we could get reports through them so that they could be checked up on? And because it is a long, tedious option or a tedious job to drive every street in the city and check for sidewalks, and then then you probably got situations where there isn't even a sidewalk, then you can't even tell.
It's for their own safety too.
Yeah, I think it might be a worthwhile, and maybe it can save everybody a lot of headache.
I delivered mail back when dinosaurs roamed the earth in the mid-'70s, and we were required to do that for the city of St. Paul. And we turned those addresses in, and I don't know if they had a fleet of people or what they had, but, it was almost instantaneously that those sidewalks were clear.
Wade, why don't you meet with them, then give us a report back in 2 weeks, see what you find out.
What do we charge if we have to go in? You know, I'm just a little bit concerned as people go on vacation, you know, and that are good about cleaning their sidewalks. And then there's habitual people that never clean it, you know, and I'm a little bit concerned about those folks that just happen to be on vacation when a snowstorm hits. You know, if they call you before they leave, I mean, is it?
They could do that, but they could do that too, but when I go on vacation, I work with my neighbors to make sure that.
Make
my area
some
gets
arrangements
taken care
ahead of
yeah.
time.
And they do the same thing back and forth.
Exactly.
And you have to do that way, otherwise you have an issue.
I do my neighbors, they do mine.
And if your neighbors don't like you, I guess you better hire it done, so.
Well, I'm usually doing
I wasn't, not directed towards you, Dave. I do have one more thing, not that I want to add one more thing, but as a liaison for the park board, as most of us do know, actually everybody does, Dusty will be leaving us here this week. I believe this is his last meeting. Are you getting close to it now? Okay. And I just want to, from my situation, working with him on the park board, thank you for obviously taking the job several years ago. It's been a pleasure working with you. You've done some great things for the city of Mitchell, some great additions for the city of Mitchell. We're looking forward to having them part of our assets, I would call it, to our community. And I'd just like to thank you for the time you've contributed to the city of Mitchell, and I wish you the best on where everything takes you. So thank you for everything, Dusty.
Thank you, Marty. Well said.
I want to just add real quick, Mayor, when I was on the selection committee when we brought Dusty on, and when he came in, he came in the day before and drove around our city, and he gave a report to us. Is basically what happened. And if you just think of some of the projects that we've put in place since Dusty's been here, the dog park, the pump track, the different bike trails that we have, and the disc golf that he took special interest in. I'm probably going to forget about 5 or 6 of them. But even the parks themselves, when he addressed all of the equipment, we're almost there. Taking equipment out to Cadwell Park for kids to play on when they're out there. I mean, just the list goes on. And Dusty, your professionalism and your expertise that you brought to the city is very much appreciated.
Not too late to change your mind.
I already tried that. It didn't work. Okay, next thing on the agenda is the committee report for sidewalks.
Sidewalk committee met tonight at 7:05 and ran to about 7:44. We did a review of the 2016 project that we have a public hearing on for the next couple of years. We especially looked at the code enforcement properties that we are going to go after, that we sent letters out last week, that some of the properties were denial of sidewalk waivers that were in the past. And then we heard from some public comments on Market Street, also to get ready for the next meeting.
I would entertain a motion to approve the committee report as presented.
So moved.
Any discussion? I'm not going to comment on it this time. I think some things just don't even deserve the courtesy of a reply, and I'm not even going to respond to it.
I totally respect that. I just wanted to give you the offer.
Thank you. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Second reading and adoption, ordinance number 2527, an ordinance to amend Title 10, zoning regulations, City of Mitchell, a municipal code.
Move to put ordinance 2527 on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Is there any public comment? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion carries. Is there now a motion for adoption of ordinance number 2527?
Yep, I move to approve or adopt.
Discussion? Is there any public comment? Not, roll call, please.
Olson,
Aye.
Rice,
Aye.
Tronis,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Barrington,
Aye.
Allen,
Aye.
Charts,
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Adoption approved. Action to approve Sanborn Design contract with SPN.
This is a contract with SPN to do the design of Sanborn Street from Haven all the way to 50th. That way we can have plans on the shelf ready to go for we decide to put the project. The cost of this would be $160,000 to get the project done. SPN is working with this number and have revised their contract to do the $160,000.
Terry, I have plans on the shelf circled, and I said, what does that mean?
So we have a set of plans ready to go, so when we are ready to rebuild that stretch, we would have plans ready, where we could send them out for bids.
And
Instead
will,
of waiting until we were ready to go for the project and then get bids,
Sure.
this means that our timing is a lot better controlled.
I believe during the budget hearings, Public Works Director Tim McGannon stated that we would be in construction or ready for construction then in 18,
Yeah.
so that we could use the information in 17 budget process for the 18 construction year. And it's a year out for planning, and then you have to get into the budget, and so that was to keep things rolling in a way that we were doing the full process.
Typically, a lot of these, especially these stretches, imagine we're gonna have a survey paperwork done, and that part's probably gonna take 2 months.
oh,
So probably the design process is probably a 6-8 month process. But it does
oh,
take
okay. I didn't realize that it was that long of a process, so.
No,
There-
go ahead,
No,
Mark.
you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention that
Senior.
we've actually done quite a little work on Sanborn. People won't believe us when we tell them that, but you know, that manhole that we did up on the corner, just over to the west of us, and then on the south side, we did, I believe, the east. I think might be the east. Right, right. And then we waited on for the other side, but. Are we pretty confident that they're going to be able to work around that, or is that going to be?
A lot of that paving that we've done will probably be
I just wanted to reiterate that the discussions that you had during the budget is originally Sanborn, another kind of patch job was intended for this budget year. But at the time, the proposal was changed so that we could do a total redesign of that street, which would incorporate the drainage issues that you had there and everything else. So instead of continuing to do kind of this patching and this piecemeal work, we're redoing the entire design plan for that street, which will give us an overall better road with better improved drainage. And it's a more complete plan than what we were originally going to do. Which
We
is
put
why
some
we-
storm sewer in
Yeah.
though.
We put some storm, and we did some water main upgrades. You probably don't know this, but we were having water main leaks, and which meant every time we had a water main leak, being a Patrick Street, we didn't really see where it was coming from. And we have a headphone listening device where we can find out about where the loudest sound is on the street, hear about where that leak is. Well, every time that happened, that meant we took top of down downstairs. Which meant for, if you take a if you take a restaurant out of service, and now we have Subway in the same area. If we take a place like that out of service, which means they can't have any service, they can't have public bathrooms, nothing like that. So it was a pretty important deal for us to go forward and replace that whole street. So it's more than just what you see up on the street surface. It was to make sure that we weren't shutting people down. We had alarming breaks in that area multiple times.
So this plan goes from Havens
Even
to
all the way to 15.
50.
And then from that stretch, it's all been
Will there be any federal funds that will be used to help with this project?
We're using the federal fund has modified how they're giving the funds to the city. Now the federal government is giving those funds directly to the city. So the amount of funds that we get is roughly $500,000. We use that money and do it in a little bit cheaper way. We don't have to go through all the federal requirements. This is what's being used on roadway work.
And during the budget process, Tim did propose the funding mechanism for the improvement to that road by delaying the total project till 2018.
That way we would have that amount of money from our yearly amount from the federal government.
Great, thank you.
But Terry, there's no opportunity for a Sanborn specific federal grant, right?
And actually now they're not doing so.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
not?
No, this is what is in replacement of that. So they give you the money to spend as you feel is needed, but you gotta do it for roadway.
And is it more or less or the same as the STIP?
It's about, it actually comes out to be about, I think it's 10% less. But the problem is the federal roadway fund is running out of money. Because they need to relook at how they're gonna redo the roadway fund. So this is an approach for the federal government to give the allotment to the city until either it runs out or if they come up with new money. And in a sense, this actually, the amount of work that you gotta put together in order to do a federal project is probably 30 to 40% more than what it would be the way we're doing it now. So by doing it now, we're getting the money up front, and then we could have a consultant or we in-house to design those plans. But we don't have to go through all the federal requirements, all the federal review. As sometimes you've seen for Spruce Street, it took 3 to 4 years, even longer, to even get a project to go forward. Without all that, now we can do a project in one review.
Sure.
So it'll save us a lot more money. We can get a lot more done with the amount of money that we're getting.
And similar to what you're seeing, I think it's on Fifth Street where we're doing that outside of STIP funds because we can do it in a cheaper way because you're not having to follow all those same regulations.
And cheaper doesn't mean we're not doing less expensive. Yeah, we're just, there's less requirements that we have to follow, but we're still getting a good job that all of us are going to have.
So you feel like that's a good deal? Yeah, I just remember you laying out the plan, saying, so if we take the STIP funds from this year and combine it with this year, and we didn't use this, and so, but it really is still.
And too, when a contractor bids a STIP project, we have about 10 to 20%.
Oh, wow.
Other than a regular city bid project, because of all the requirements that are needed.
Terry? You can't get off that easy. Ben, I have no problem with SPN, but I've been asked, and obviously I think most of us know here, especially been sitting here from the council a while, SPN is the engineer services for majority of our projects. Is there a reason for why we pick SPN every time? Have we looked outside the box? Have we double checked to make sure pricing is fair among the board? I mean, I guess it's the question that some people in the public are asking, and I'm putting you on the spot.
The thing about, this, I wish Tim was here to answer this, but the thing about professional services is you don't bid where you don't quote normally professional services. You look at the consultant and you decide on picking them in order to do a project. Now, the biggest reason why SPN picked for the majority of these projects is they are they're living in this community and buying stuff in this community, and they are very familiar with some of the design. They designed Second, Third, and Fourth Avenue from Gamble all the way over to the other end. So they have existing plans on a lot of those cross streets, and they have existing knowledge on that system. Now, when we told them that we needed a price, they came in over the $160,000. But Tim told them, all I got is $160,000. So they lowered their fee in order to make it work.
No, that's good. I appreciate the answer, like I said, so.
But I don't think you answered all of it. They asked, did you ever check anybody else?
I don't, Tim kind of ran through this, so I don't know if you did check with anybody else.
I mean, it's just comparative. We make you get 2 or 3 bids on everything else, you know, even on professional services.
Professional services are,
I understand, but I mean, as common, in business, you just don't take the first one, so, anyway.
In the future, look at it.
Yes, another way to put it is, when you look at a bid, you always consider price, service, and quality, and not always necessarily in that order.
Right.
Sometimes it changes from vendor to vendor, so you got to consider all the three then factors: price, service, and quality.
And I think we'd all agree we want to work locally if we can, no doubt
If you
about
can.
it. But we also got to make sure that we are
Right.
getting the right, dollar
And-
for the bid that we're doing too. I mean, so we got to be
Well,
very conscious.
my previous life, that's what I used to tell the vendors, local, you always give local vendors preference, provided all things are equal: price, service, and
Correct.
quality.
Yep. Just questions I've been hearing, so.
I'm going to move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action to approve right-of-way agreement with South Dakota Department of Transportation for Highway 37 and Spruce Avenue.
This is a continuation of a project that is in the design mode right now of rebuilding First Street from Haven all the way down to the south end of the Walmart. As part of that rebuild, we were asking the DOT to reconstruct East Spruce from First Street all the way to the railroad tracks as a 4-lane roadway when First Street project is done. Due to that, the right-of-way, as you see on the drawing that Stephanie has, is only a 33-foot wide right-of-way. And with building a 4-lane roadway, now it's a 2-lane rural section, we need additional right-of-way in order to build that roadway. So the request is to come up with additional right-of-way with the DOT. The DOT is doing all the easements and work to do what they just need the city sign off for this area.
33 feet each side of center line.
Yeah, and so now what we're basically asking for is an additional 17 feet, so it'll be a 50-foot right-of-way on both sides. And then there is also a temporary easement that's on there.
And then Terry, for those that are familiar with the earlier conversations, this also allows us to tie in the bike path link out to MTI. This was part of the agreement that the city made, is improving this intersection so that bike path that MTI got a grant for will connect then to ours that we're adding on the new improved road.
So first,
Did you confuse the terms right-of-way and street and roadway? Should be, yeah, and then you're expanding it.
we're expanding it to 50 feet, so a total of
50
100
feet each side of the
Yeah.
center.
And just so you guys know, First Street reconstruction is all DOT funds, where Spruce Street, that will be all city funds. So we'll be using city funds to rebuild that 5-lane. And then at some point, once we do, now this doesn't include the crossing, the one across the, railroad track. So at that point, we'll be working with the county, do a county share of rebuilding that crossing. And that'll tie into that new bike road that MTI is building. And then at that point, at a future time, we will be looking at working with the county on a cost to extend that 4-lane all the way to the east. We're getting a lot of requests from the truck traffic, rail line, and MTI traffic that is rural.
And does this address in any way the fulfill our emergency? No. There's no way to take that road and go into other possible roads.
We talked about a bridge up by the Hampton Inn. So on the north side of the Hampton Inn, you build a new bridge across the road track, but you're looking at right now, I think this is a good priority, good way to.
Move approval of right-of-way agreement.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Motion to approve Stockwell Engineering contract.
Basically, this is for us to use Stockwell Engineering for comprehensive park master plan going forward. That's the plan of this local will help guide not only the department, but that's visual roads, development, gaps in service area, lots of recommendations on that sort of thing, with future growth, as well as evaluating all of our current facilities and making sure we're not either underserving or overserving in some of our facilities.
Now, you weren't here then, I don't believe, but Greg McCurry was on the council, and he talked about things like maybe future parks should have, Wi-Fi and that kind of thing. Will these people be looking at those kinds of things as well, or do they just look at the actual sort of swing sets and that sort of thing?
They'll look at broadcast. This company, they send all the park right now every year. I've been here. They've been working with people like that. They're going to take a comprehensive look at what facilities and
And just out of curiosity,
Two comments, and on the standard, this is what I would call a non-standard agreement, which is fine, as opposed to the SPM contract, which is a formal document of the joint committee of three various engineering associations. But in reviewing the standard terms and conditions, if you have I don't see a pagination, but in the standard terms and conditions, if anybody's looking at it, if not, I'll just read it. Okay, let's go to the second sentence. If after commencement of the services, the project is delayed for any reason beyond Stockwell's control for more than 60 days, the terms and conditions contained herein will be subject to revision by Stockwell. And I think that's a unacceptable provision for the city. Nobody's expecting that to happen. Late this afternoon, I finally did get a return call back from, not from John Brown, but from a lady. And I proposed that we change that language to, in other words, as you can see from listening to that, the terms and conditions will be subject to revision by Stockwell. By its terms, they would be given the dictation, a one-sided dictation to the city on what revision of terms would be. Covenant of good faith notwithstanding, I've had a judge say to me in representing a contractor, well, if your client didn't like that provision, why did he agree to it? You see? So I would go straight to substitute that if it's delayed for any reason beyond Stockwell's control for more than 60 days, the project will be deemed abandoned by the city and the provisions of capital D 8.0 shall apply. And that's on the next page. That's termination or abandonment. Much better. There you got arm's length reformation. Nobody wants that to happen. We're going to have a ship with Dusty leaving. There's going to be a ship without a captain or pilot for some period of time. And if Stephanie will have to watch to make sure that there doesn't fall through the cracks for 60 days. And if she gets hit by a train, then I will coordinate before I leave with probably the park board so that they've got people watching to make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks and we end up, but if the, what am I trying to say? Unforeseeable would occur, then we don't want to be in an unforeseeable, if you will, and have our terms dictated to us. We're better off starting completely at arm's length and reform in that fashion. And the second thing, and I didn't, and because it was late in the afternoon when I finally did, was able to get a hold of a person and a representative at this company of authority who was willing to make that commitment. Did agree to that first proposal. Did not mention on C 2.0, client to provide contractors. Client will furnish the services of a contractor who, along with client, will be responsible for creating the overall project schedule. And my belief is that's actually not applicable because we're not going to have a contractor, are we? Or are we? No, I think that's,
Carl, I had the same questions all on item C, owner's responsibility.
yeah.
Do we have people in place that will be able to do those? And Dusty, that, with you leaving and maybe in 6 months before we have somebody new, who's going to provide and coordinate all of that information? Couple of thoughts I had on that. Obviously, Stephanie was more directly in the group with that. This was going to be assigned to Steve Rowe, our supervisor, and I would also be willing, if I'm not here, help coordinate this process.
Just so we don't end up with that falling through the cracks.
Yeah, that. I've actually, last couple of days, preparing a file for structural engineering. Okay. I'd be willing to be a part of that.
Yeah. So there, I think if we don't strike that whole paragraph, we just strike the language, which is inapplicable, and I think they will have no problem with it because it's inapplicable, period, is that the client will furnish the services of a contractor along with, and just say contractor will be responsible, or client will be responsible for creating the overall project schedule. Does that make sense? And I haven't talked to them, but I have no doubt they'll agree to that because the first, having a contractor is just not applicable, period, to either their position or our position. With those changes, looks good.
Well, I guess I would move to hold over this till our next meeting, because there's no sense approving a contract if the other side is not going to
Agree to it.
agree to it, so.
I think they will. I did get
Well-
a commitment on agreement on the first paragraph by a person authorized representative orally. And they were going to send to Stephanie, but there's no reason not to carry it over.
Yeah,
It's going to delay it by 2 weeks. I mean, I know.
Yeah, there's no reason not to carry it over.
I agree with you
yeah, and they may decide, well, as long as we're amending, we'd like to put this in or that in.
Yeah. There's no reason not to carry it over.
So I'll move that we hold this over till our next meeting.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The 2015 motion, action to approve the 2015 Personnel Policy Manual. This was tabled from the November 2nd, 2015 meeting. 26, no?
Yep,
2015.
it should now say when you take action 2016, but the reason why it says 2015 is that's actually the action that's sitting on the table that's
That's the
tabled.
day they tabled it, so it is 2015. When you approve it, yeah.
illegal controlled substance. The bottom line is when Avera tests for controlled substance, they're testing for prescription drugs, they're testing for cough medicine, they're testing for illegal drugs. Those things that are over the counter or prescription become an illegal drug when they're used without a prescription or if they're used in a manner that does not fit the prescription or the directions on the bottle. So prescribed drugs can be illegal drugs in that situation. The second one on the at-will employment change, Steve pointed out to me that we had the word supervisor 99 times in the manual. And so we decided to keep the word supervisor, but clarify that that actually describes department heads, assistant department heads. The manager at the swimming pool could be a supervisor, just depending on how that policy, they always report to their immediate supervisor. So that was the second thing. The third and fourth items that I mentioned here, we kept the same, which is the gifts and gratuity policy and the credit card use. Gifts and gratuities can be a long discussion, and I didn't feel that I was qualified at that point to make up a new policy. I think that's something that the city council and the city administrator should be involved in. And so we recommend that we talk about that in the future. And credit card use, Steve mentioned that our credit card use policy is very archaic. It says, we're not supposed to use it if we go anywhere to do shopping except the internet. And so, again, that's just something that just needs to be updated. And then we had a distracted driving course for all of the city employees recently, and decided to interject into the policy manual for vehicle use that cell phones are not to be used while driving any city vehicle. And so those are the things that are in the policy manual that are presented to you in your council packet. The next section is 13 typos. And actually, I have to say, they're not necessarily typos, because when you're reviewing a document, Word doesn't make a distinction between the word complaint and complain. They're both words, and so only by reading through the thing with a fine-tooth comb can we recognize those. So harasser rather than harassed. So the yellow highlighted areas that I have, those are things that are actual corrections that were printed incorrectly in the first version. One is the introductory period. It used to be 6 months. We changed it to 1 year. We had it 6 months in one place in the document and 1 year in another place. So we just fixed that. The one that says change after completion of to at the beginning of has to do with the new policy where employees will get 1% of their sick leave after the completion of 5 years at the beginning of their 6 years if they leave service with the city and they have given 2 weeks notice and leave on good terms. And on the next one, change overtime to call in. That one is just, it's a technical thing. Overtime, call-in pay is not based on, or call-in pay is not called overtime. It's called premium pay. And in the case where this section is in use, it's call-in pay. It's not overtime pay, but it's still at time and a half. What's the difference?
The difference is overtime is anything worked over 40 hours in a work week. Call-in pay is what Kevin Roth was talking about when he said he calls his truck drivers in to remove snow. And they start working, say, at midnight, and it's call-in pay at time and a half, premium pay, until their regular shift starts at 7:30 in the morning. And then they may work until 12:30, and then they may have to go home and sleep. Stephanie?
A good example is that call-in time, that premium rate of pay that they earn for that becomes their base rate of pay. It's not, so if they work 40 hours of call-in pay, their base rate of pay for that 40 hours is higher than what they normally earn.
But it's not time and a half?
It is at time and a half, but it's their base rate of pay. It's not an overtime rate. So for that period of time that they're working call-in, that becomes what their wage is for that period of time.
And so then if they go overtime
And
on
they
their,
get overtime on top of the premium. If all hours worked were at premium rate, then their overtime would be overtime based on the premium rate.
And isn't overtime in part based on Federal Department of Labor regulations, which are dictate
Absolutely.
what you call overtime and what you don't call overtime.
Yes. And of course, the word overtime and call-in are used quite a bit in all of our union contracts, and so we make sure that we're very clear about which is which. Yeah, comp time is yep, that's another issue, which is also in there with the overtime mix-up. Let me see, and then on the bottom, we just said, I just wanted to clarify because the mayor had this question, and I don't think I probably clarified it enough, but why do we have a personnel policy manual that has a drug and alcohol policy in it, and why do we have a separate drug and alcohol policy? And the difference is the personnel policy takes care of all regular employees who are subject to pre-employment testing, post-accident testing, and reasonable suspicion testing. The drug and alcohol policy, the separate policy, is made by the Federal Transit Authority, which specifically works with Palace Transit. It's their drivers, their supervisors, their mechanics, their dispatchers. FMCSA is the Federal Motor Carriers Association. That's all of our CDL drivers at the park department and the street department. And then we also have public safety, which is all of the public safety, dispatch, fire, and police. And those three areas are also subject to random testing, where their name will be called and they'll be sent immediately up to Avera for a drug or an alcohol test or both. And so the policy manual that addresses just drug and alcohol is federally mandated. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes.
I'm not going to pretend that I'm as thorough as Steve, because I know I'm not. But I did have a question on one of the acronyms that was used in section 3.1.6 on consequences of violation. You refer to the TPA, and I tried to go back and see if TPA was
Sure.
referred to anywhere else.
We can add that in. That's third-party administrator. For example, Dakota Care is a third-party administrator for our health, and Avera Occupational Medicine is a third-party administrator for our drug and alcohol. Good question. I'll clarify that.
I've got a question on the drug and alcohol policy, and similar to Susan's, we use BAC, blood alcohol content, but we never define it.
I'll do that.
So could we define that in there?
Absolutely.
Also, the effective date on the first page is wrong. It's the year 12,016 that you have on there.
12,016?
Yeah.
Okay. And I have to say, the top 5 that I went through where Councilman Rice and I had actually made some changes, there were a whole lot, you're right, there's a whole lot of formatting and things like that that he
I
caught,
got
which is
one
good.
other, and I asked the same question on the other policy. The contact person, the fact that we don't just put human resources director, but put your name, is that required? I cringe at putting people's
know.
names in there.
I know. Jessica, do you
So-
remember that? I mean, yeah.
Do they ask for names?
Yeah, because actually,
Who
I'm
asked for the name?
occupational medicine and federal transit, because, for example, we all have titles, and Darla Ettinger at the hospital is our medical review officer, MRE, and I'm the DER, drug enforcement, what am I?
Well,
But resource, yes.
would it be possible in the policy itself to say human resource or
We
whoever?
put human resource
And
director.
then in the directive to employees, you know, list
Put the
the,
name.
list the individual, the
Sure.
email.
I'm sure I can do that without having to go back to the FTA and have that approved. So,
We
sure.
hope that this is a policy that will last forever, in which case you may not always be
That would,
HR, whatever.
you know, I do have to say that, you know, it's taken me almost 5 years to get to this point where I was able to present this to you. The last time it was revised was in 2005. Our goal is certainly to revise it every year.
The one
Good.
comment I was going to make on the personnel manual is the way that we did this is so that you're going to have a clean starting point instead of looking at individual policies that Billy was amending or changing. You're readopting the entire policy manual. Going forward, there will be an annual review of the contract, and if policy number 3 needs to be updated, the council can act on policy number 3, and now you have an amendment to that policy with that date, but with still a current contract or a current agreement or policy manual. But because it had been 10-plus years, it's important to have a clean starting point going forward.
And just out of curiosity, do you give every employee a hard copy of this, or is
Yes.
it just digital?
No, we give them all a hard copy because not all of our employees have access to digital.
So that means you're reprinting them for everybody every year?
Because if you are only amending policy 2, you only print out the new policy 2 to have the state department sign off on it, and you just provide that. You don't provide the whole new.
Got it.
This will be formatted so that each policy is on its own page. So you just say, take these pages out and.
So why couldn't you do that with the email address rather than, you know, and maybe it's a distinction without a difference, but to me, you have a general policy and then, you know, the specifics of it are, the actual implementation is a different kind of deal.
Okay.
Okay, I've got another question. I don't expect an answer, but there was a recent information I read someplace, obviously it was on the internet because that's where everything is, that talked about blood alcohol content and baseline, especially for CDL and that type of stuff. Are all of the people given a baseline blood alcohol test when they say that they have not had alcohol? Because the information that I was reading, not everybody is 0.00
Right.
for blood alcohol content as baseline.
Right. In our,
And what if your natural occurring blood level is above 0.02?
Well, your natural occurring blood level, unless you're a diabetic and acetone.
So
Right.
my question, has that been discussed as a requirement for our CDL people
Yeah.
to try and eliminate the secondary test and the possible conflict of refusal and all those types of things? Because I have heard of some people that they know their blood alcohol content level isn't 0.00 at
right. But
normal conditions.
If you had an accurate enough test for all the people in this room would probably land by metabolic processes, 0.002 to 0.006. Now, the testing is accurate enough for that to trigger a result, but at that very low level, the margin of error is 0.02.
yeah, if
My
I could
question
address
is,
just two
has
things.
it been discussed?
Those are good
You're
questions,
an
Steve.
airline pilot, they show up, you got 0.02.
Carl.
Right. Number one, and the mayor just brought that up this morning at our department head meeting too, that some people will have trace levels of alcohol in their system, you know, whether they've been drinking or not. Our consequences don't begin until it's 0.02, which is pretty unlikely anybody's going to have that amount just normally in their blood system. 0.02 to 0.039,
Yep.
you're suspended for a day and you have disciplinary action. 0.04, we send you to a substance abuse professional and you are terminated. 0.04 is where a CDL driver loses their license. And of course, 0.08, I think, right, Lyndon, is a DUI. So we're saying we go by the CDL 0.04, and that's referred to a substance abuse professional and terminated. If it's 0.02 to 0.039, there's going to be disciplinary problems. If it's under 0.2 or 0.02, it doesn't come out as a positive, Steve. But we'll check more into that too. Thank you. All of our numbers are required by the FDA. Yeah. So at this point, I would simply request that you adopt the policy manual with the typographical errors and the corrections included. And then secondly, I think I would ask for another motion to adopt the drug and alcohol policy manual. Thank you.
Well, I will move to adopt the policy manual, and thank you, Billy, for taking the time to go through that with me. But I want to make sure that item 3, 4, and 5 on her printout are brought back for council discussion at a planning meeting at least. The gifts and gratuities and the credit card use, were, the credit card use will probably creating violations of our policy manual by how it's used currently if there aren't any changes. But that's been going on since that's been our credit card policy. And I think we should get this passed. It's not going to hurt anything to have that there. And then the gifts and gratuities just leaves some questions in my mind as to how or why we got to how we're doing that. And I would make the motion to approve this, but that 3, 4, and 5, the cell phone use also be put on a council planning discussion, one of our quarterly discussion items.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action to approve
That was just the,
that was just the personnel policy
Yeah.
manual. Now, action to approve the drug and alcohol manual.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action to approve contract for a compensation and classification study.
Scoot over to my microphone, sorry about that. Included in your packet is a request for approving a proposal for a compensation and classification study. As you can see in the proposal, or in my background report, the budget that we included for 2016 was $25,000. Originally, we were anticipating doing just the compensation study. We did find this, or became aware of that this company is also working with some other cities within South Dakota this year, and they've done several cities in the past. Full cost of the proposal would be $32,500. That is $7,500 above what's budgeted. If the council approves this tonight, I would request that we would identify that $7,500 out of contingency in the event that it's needed. We do have professional services it actually comes out of the human resources budget is where it currently is. I'm anticipating we will probably use the full amount of our labor relations professional fee out of that budget this year, considering that we have 2 pending cases right now. So I do believe that the contingency probably would be needed for 16. There are a couple things that would be in this contract that are above and beyond what we would have expected in the original, when I was originally proposing this to the council. And the things that stuck out that we liked is the fact that they're also doing a classification study, which means they do a job analysis where they do an interview of 70% of the full-time positions, not people, but the positions. They look at where those jobs are currently classified for internal equity as well as equity in the external market. They will look at job descriptions. They will revise and update those job descriptions for us. They will also review all of our exempt positions to ensure that they're compliant with Fair Labor Standards Act exemptions. They do manage or handle an appeals process for us following the recommendations to the Council of Implementation of where those classifications fall. The thing that's nice about that is that will be advantageous for us with union. We will be at a full contract reopener for all 3 unions. So it would just be helpful in that process in negotiating maybe what those discrepancies are. Furthermore, I also like that they will propose a couple different options for the council in implementing the recommendations from the study. Again, going back to our discussions that we had during the budget process, is that this is an ideal time for us because hopefully we could use this as a way of implementation over a 3-year timeline of some sort to coincide with the 3-year agreement for all 3 unions. During negotiations in 15 for the 2016 contract with all 3 unions, we did state that this would be our intention, that we're going to do this. I can't guarantee that we can afford to implement what comes out of it, but that we'll work to make sure that we're working with the union and trying to get to a better 3-year agreement or something more long-term than what we've done in the past. As you saw on the proposal, they take Department of Labor data, but they also then take 25 comparable entities that we help determine who that will be for the compensation comparison. They would start the contract effective February 1st so that we could have results by mid-May, which is perfect timing for us for using that information for both budget and union negotiations as well. So it'd keep us on that tight schedule to get that done. I have visited with a couple of the entities that have used it, and they're very happy with the results. I don't know if you have any other questions, but I'll turn it over for your discussion.
I just have one question, and that is this something that we can, I hesitate to use the word impose, but, if they said we have 14 classifications now and we should go down to 3, is that something we can just do, or is that something that we have to negotiate with the union, which makes me, if we have to negotiate with the union, makes me wonder if this is going to be money well spent.
It's anything that has to do with the terms or conditions of employment is a negotiable item. I will tell you that right now, what I've seen in the last year and a half of negotiations is that there is a tremendous amount of classification requests that come in. There's a tremendous amount of requests for individual adjustments for individual positions. I think from the city's perspective, having actual measured data that's not just based on, we're going to call another city and see what their planner makes. They're coming in, they're doing that job content analysis, and they're doing actual market comparisons. It gives you as a council data to use when you're measuring those requests for future negotiations. Yeah, it would. It would aid us in the negotiation process, I believe, as well. Furthermore, I like that they also give technical support. I can't remember, Billy, maybe you remember, it was a year, I believe. Yeah. So as these little things come up, they're going to be there to provide support. The appeals process, I think, is going to be tremendously helpful during the negotiation process, because that's just going to give employees a whole nother step to go through, maybe if they didn't agree with what the study said and the reasons why, and then the city will just have that much more information to use for our position during negotiations as well. I don't think it's wasted.
I'm sorry.
No, I just was responding that I don't think it's wasted money, as you asked.
There was a study done while I was on, so it would have been early 2000, somewhere between 2000 and 2006.
2005.
Yeah, it was in 2005. Okay. Do you have any idea if it was a company that is still in existence?
Nope.
Or?
And I actually have read it. It was done by an individual, and all they, what it basically was a very basic compensation comparison.
Salary comparison.
Salary
All it was.
comparison. It was not anything even remarkably remotely close to what we're proposing here.
I was on that council, or on the council meet, or sitting on the council at the same time that came up, and it was just strictly salaries.
And they didn't even implement the
No, and as
results of
Stephanie
it.
says, this takes different people in different departments, and they classify them, so you have your employee classifications.
The main difference is, from what I could tell in reading that study, and it was done by a local individual that actually I had worked with previously in Brookings a couple times, she was just taking positions that seemed comparable based on looking at the existing job descriptions and comparing the wages. Yeah. This is completely different because they come in and they do an interview to ask what are the tasks that are actually associated with each of those individual positions, compare those job skills and those tasks to see if they should be in the same classification or not, and what those internal structures are. So it's a totally different ballgame than what was done in 2005, and again, 2005 wasn't implemented, to my understanding.
No, it wasn't.
And what I like about it is that.
You have to share my mic.
Thank you. What I like about it is that they will interview 70% of the positions, not 70% of the employees, but 70% of the positions. Oh, I'm sorry, missed that. And they also will help revise all of the job descriptions, which has needed to be done. Excuse me, I never listened to you. Come on. But I just wanted to let you know, those are the two things that, from an HR perspective, I'm really
Big
pleased.
part of that too is it establishes a level of, a criteria level for when you get down to, to your union negotiations.
It's going to give us valid data to be using in our negotiations as we enter into our full contract reopener.
One of the questions that occurs to me was when you said we may not be able to afford to implement it. Typically, in the other cities that have used this group, have they found that they are underpaying their employees, or is
I-
that even an
It's
something?
probably not comparing apples to apples because everything is different. You know, I don't know if other cities have been doing that every year or
Sure.
every 5 years. What I can know from my experience is it could come in where maybe some of our positions are over where they should be and some are under. But the bottom line is I know what our financial position is, and I'm not committing to say, I'm not willing to commit to say that we can implement something that we don't know what the costs associated are.
Right.
Part of what I liked about their proposal is that they will present a couple different options to the city. I have seen contracts where if there is a significant cost to the governmental entity, they'll do some kind of a graduated implementation over a specified time frame. Over 3 years, they'll do this plus this in order to try to stair-step you into it. So I think that that's part of what the consultants will walk us through, depending on what the results are. Maybe we're going to find out we're really competitive with where we are. It's just our classifications need to be adjusted some. You know, we'll know that when we get closer to the end. But I like that they're going to propose a couple different strategies for you for
I think two
implementation.
things to point out too, Stephanie, would be that, you know, and that question's come up before, that no employee is going to take a pay cut.
Right.
You know, so that's not going to happen. I know
It-
that became that was a question here a week or so ago asked me,
Yep.
and I, my understanding is there will be no
Well-
pay cuts for no employees because if they're at what happens is their salary stays frozen at a certain level until they get to that
And
certain
that's
step.
yep, that's absolutely the council's prerogative as to what you do with that. In my experience, we did a formal major review in 2001 when I first started at the county, and any of those positions that were above what the study said they should be, we just froze them at that wage until their positions caught up, which is the best way from an employee. to
Exactly. The
stand.
second point too I wanted to make was on the making sure that we do this comparison. It ensures us that we are paying our employees a fair salary, because if we lose them because they go somewhere else for a higher salary, turnover and training is very expensive. So we want to make sure that we're paying our employees the right salary so we don't lose them to a competitor.
And the problem we don't want to get into is continuing to evaluate the wages of the positions that are open and adjusting those when we're filling them and not looking at the rest of the positions. Then what happens is you have a major inequity internally because the ones that have turned over, like recently, we've had some retirements and things of department heads. At that time, we do a comparison to see what the other positions are making in other cities. Now, we don't want to keep those up to grade because we've had to recently hire, but then let everything else fall behind because we haven't hired. So it's going to ensure that internally we're equitable and that we're all equitable with the external market as well. A lot of hand.
That was the point I was going to make is of the number of employees we have. Our competition in some of the employment pool we have is the surrounding Mitchell area, where you get to the more professional, like the police officers, firemen, our department heads. There, our competition is the other cities. So it is going to be interesting to see how they kind of roll this all together. But, again, and throughout the whole state is the employment pool continues to shrink. And so where do we need to be to keep our employees, our good employees here?
That's why I think this study is a very important study, and I think it's something we should do. We haven't. And this, like I say, this is so far more comprehensive than what we went through in 2005 that, there's just really no comparison at all.
And I know you guys have probably all looked through the references, but if you look at the qualifications of the individuals that would be working on the study, they're highly qualified individuals. They have direct experience with police, law enforcement, fire, government sector. These are very highly qualified individuals working on the project.
Move to approve.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Motion to adjourn. Carried.